A few things to know before you fly WestJet to Nashville. You don't need cowboy boots to have a great time in Nashville. You don't need a cowboy hat either. You don't even need to be a country music fan. To have a great time in Nashville, you just need to go to Nashville. WestJet can certainly help with that, with great low WestJet fares non-stop from Calgary to Nashville. Visit WestJet.com or call your travel agent.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome to the show. This is Lori Ann Smith. This is One Child to Be Survivor to Another Restoration. And that song I actually usually play with another show, but it's called The Calling by Angel Wing, XL Music Publishing. And it's a nice song. So, yeah, hopefully you're having a good morning so far. I'm glad you could be with me. This is a 30-minute show, just looking at really just my healing journey, looking at, how are we doing on our healing journey? Are there things that we need to work on, for self-care, coping mechanisms, meditation, whatever we can do sort of on our own to help ourselves feel better and getting through things and just living the day-to-day, which a lot of times I forget to do just because I'm busy or I'll put it off for whatever reason. So, yeah, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And we'll get right into it. It's Friday morning, May 19th, 7 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta. And I'm glad to be here. So we'll get right into this. If you're a survivor, you want to make sure that you're safe enough to be listening. So you can find that out by looking at safety information, and you can get that from ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse and More Center Program. Just go to their website, just type in your browser, ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse More Center Program, something like that. It'll come up. It's a Survivor to Thriver manual. And the first chapter is Safety First. It's like 60 pages long. It's a large read, but I read through it a couple of times, and I'm glad that I did. And it really showed me where I was and what I needed to do to sort of work on, how I could learn how to be safe, right? Just so I wouldn't be triggered and go backward in my healing journey and things like that. So you want to make sure you're safe enough to be listening this morning. If you're not, just turn the show off and you won't be hurting my feelings at all. Get that information and make sure you keep yourself safe, right? Everybody else listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse. Abuse is very, very sensitive material, very sensitive subject, so it may bother people. You have to know what you have to know what you're okay to listen to and what's not going to bother you. So you have to listen at your own discretion. And this show is brought to you by CDAT Radio, produced by Tony Angelo. And the links are provided there on the show page. You can just go check that out. And the chat room's open, so if anybody wants to sit in there with me, you're more than welcome to. And we'll get right into this. Let's see. We're looking morning reflection. How am I doing? How are we doing? These are things we can ask ourselves, I kind of keep a monitor throughout the week, really, but I just do these shows Monday and Friday mornings. But I'm working on things very slowly. I can only have so much time during the day to actually work on these things. So I'm doing pretty good just to keep going forward and not let it just drop and put it off. So I'm glad that I'm doing that. I'm working on it's a workbook from Allender. Let me get you the actual title of it. The Wounded Heart. Something to do with the Wounded Heart. It's called The Wounded Heart, Hope for Adult Victims of Childhood Sexual Abuse. It's Dr. Dan B. Allender with Karen Lee Thorpe, and it's a book with a companion workbook. And this book is helping me out a lot. It's getting to some root issues that I really didn't know how to get to. It's helping me to there's been lots of, actually, it's helpful in a way, but also very disturbing because I've had some memories that had been kind of pushed down that have sort of resurfaced, and I can actually, I'm actually getting in touch with a lot more of the way that I felt and what was actually going on when the child sexual abuse was taking place. So you've got to be careful when you're doing work like that on your own to make sure that you are safe enough to do it. I know that I'm okay to do the work on my own. I'm not going to self-injure or hurt somebody or hurt myself or anything like that. So otherwise I wouldn't be doing it by myself. But I know that I'm okay and strong enough and safe enough to be able to do it. And so, but I would say be really careful when you do stuff like that on your own, because it can be disturbing. And then, if we don't have someone to sort of somebody who's like a support, around us, like a mentor or somebody who's around us who can help us out, it can be very difficult to get through. So I would just say be very careful. But that's what I'm working on right now is that book and that workbook, which is it's actually very helpful for me. So far, so good. So I'm just kind of working on things, so I'm happy about that. This morning I feel pretty good. I've had a lot of flashbacks this week. I'm not sure why. And dealing with flashbacks and actually working with some boundary work, containment boundary work, stuff like that, which helped. Because I'm so glad that I got that info. You can get that info too if you go to. There's lots of work out there about boundaries and containment boundaries and things that we can do to help ourselves, coping mechanisms, right, to help with flashbacks. But if you're not sure where to get that information, there's a website called. It's called Child Abuse Survivor Monument. It's Michael C. Irving. He's a PhD. He's a counselor. He's a survivor of abuse himself, of child abuse. So he knows a lot about it. He's a PhD. He's a coach, counselor, Michael C. Irving. And so you can get that information just by typing in Michael C. Irving Irving or Child Abuse Survivor Monument. Go to the Survivor tab and the Adult Survivor info. And he's got all kinds of good info. If we have time, we'll go over some of that this afternoon. This morning. I'm already moving my day into the afternoon. It's going to be a busy day. So we'll get into this thing here. This is the last part of this acronym from Cheryl from HAVOCA, Help for Adult Victims of Child Abuse, HAVOCA.org. I did pop the link in the chat room there. And this is the very last letter of adult survivors of sexual abuse. And like they said, it's not just for people who have been sexually abused. Anybody who's been abused would benefit from this information. So it's just a little acronym with little blurbs that Cheryl's written for each letter. And we're on the very last one, and that's E in the word abuse. So she says here, envision a better future when you become happier, more content with who you are. To do this, learn to love yourself, learn to forgive yourself, and trust in those you love. Find inner peace in your heart, mind, and soul. Know the trials and tribulations of life. Will always be there. The roller coaster rides shall never cease. Learn to deal with them the best way you know how. Stay strong, stay positive, be the best you can be. Be proud of who you are. You are a survivor. I love that. That's awesome. That's sort of what I try to keep in mind throughout my day, throughout my week, throughout my months, the years, is not to give up and keep looking for that inner peace and that inner, strength and, work on every day, just getting stronger and stronger. And it's hard. And some days are better than others. Some months are better than others. Some years are better than others. Sometimes we can sit for a long time with a lot of, horrible things going on around us or whatever. Things just maybe not going well, and find that we just feel like the struggle's too much. But, every time I kind of come through something like that, then I realize that while I do have the strength to do this, it just proves to me that, that I can do it, and, that if I need to, I just need to reach out and get some help, which before I would have never done. And now I'm more than willing to do. So, things are getting better slowly, but I love what she has here to say. Envision a better future where you become happier, more content with who you are. That's awesome, because that's what I'm working on right now. And, working on how I feel about myself. I can't do anything about how other people feel about me. And it's, when it comes down to it, it's really how I feel about myself. And then, recognizing the things that I'm capable of, not the things that I'm not capable of, and honoring my life, because coming from abuse and being abused, so often we want to push that part of ourselves out because it's so painful. But I sort of get what they say on some websites. I've seen it out there where we should embrace our lives, And at first, when I used to hear that, I used to get mad because I'd be like, I don't want to embrace that, There'd be a lot of anger involved. And now I'm like, well, I can't change the past, I can't change what happened to me. I can't go back and change anything of that, but I can change and make a difference in my daily walk to change the future, and that's my responsibility. And so, in that, I guess I suppose, like they said here, be proud of who you are. You've come so far. We're survivors. We've made it. Some of us are still working on making it. I would say that's just sort of the way it is. But at least we survived the abuse, and so many don't, right? And so then, do we just throw it all away, give up, or do we keep that fire alive inside that says, no, I did not deserve that, and I deserve so much better, and I am proud of who I am, and I'm working on becoming a functioning adult, who can handle and cope and deal with things, and learning to love myself, like she says, learn to love yourself, learn to forgive yourself, trust those around you who are trustworthy. I'd say we can't trust everybody, but find that inner peace. So I really like that. That's awesome. So that's the end of that, and we're done with that now. I thought that was pretty awesome, and we'll move into this feeling section of HAVOCA. This is a HAVOCA, Help for Adult Victims of Child Abuse. It's another article that they have. It's called Feelings. And I think this is interesting because it sort of aligns with attitudes and that inner child healing stuff. So we briefly looked at it on Monday, and just the beginning section of it. And that's the main, I guess, point is that thinking is not really the same as feeling, or even remembering sometimes cognitively about the abuse is not the same as thinking about, as actually understanding the feelings associated with what happened. Because I know in my case that's the case. I talk a lot about my story. I do a lot of, I've been doing that since here on Blog Talk Radio since 2009, writing books and blogging and doing shows on other shows and doing other things on my own shows, Ustream and elsewhere, and also being a guest on other people's shows. And I've talked a lot about my story, but it's not the same as actually feeling the feelings. So then when I get home and I do the work, and I'm sitting around my, in my world doing the work on all of this stuff, the inner child healing work or whatever I'm working on, feeling the feelings, it's difficult. It really is. But I need to get in touch with those feelings if I'm going to ever heal. Like they said, it's tough, because it's difficult to allow ourselves to feel those feelings, right? So they said here, the important thing when coming to terms with your feelings is to still remain in touch with your thoughts, and they will help to balance the strong feelings which at first may overwhelm you. By maintaining a positive thought process, but allowing your feelings to be explored, you will soon be able to communicate your feelings and release the years of tension. So it's quite interesting. They were just going on talking a little bit about that. So we'll move on to the next section here. This person says, whoever wrote this article, I'm not sure who wrote it. They don't say, but it's from HAVOCA. They said, a friend of mine, this is them, said, all these years I've thought I'd dealt with my abuse. The trouble is I did too much thinking and not enough feeling. I suppressed all my feelings into a small, dark room in my inner self. Eventually the room became full, but I still kept cramming those feelings and emotions in. And now that I'm opening the door to confront the demon within, I am overwhelmed by years of neglected emotion that has been behind the locked door for too long. It is bursting to get out, and that's my demon. So that's what they wrote here. And that's just interesting because for me it was, instead of being in a locked room, it was I could envision little drawers that I had stuffed the abuse in, and all the feelings and emotions that surrounded it in these little drawers, and I'd take the key and lock it. And so instead of a room, with a room where in the dark where I'd keep those emotions and feelings and whatnot, it was just these little drawers, and I could feel these drawers were starting to get ready to burst. And at about 30 years old, especially after my mom passed away, she was my main abuser. And so I was grieving my mom, the loss of my mom, and also grieving the fact that I would never, ever get what I needed from her. She abused me. She didn't treat me right. She didn't love me, and now she was gone. And at the age of 30 to 31, I had a lot of difficulty with a lot of overwhelming pressure from this emotions and feelings that had never, first of all, never been allowed to express because of the abuse, because I was abused. I wasn't allowed to express anything. And so I just stuffed it, So this is, I think, quite common for abuse survivors, right? It's part of the deal. If I showed any emotion or even opened my mouth about how I was feeling about the abuse, I'd just be abused some more. And when I was young, it was physical abuse with verbal and verbal battery and and psychological abuse, but also then when I got older, after the age of 17, when the physical abuse stopped, it was just emotional abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse. I was never allowed to ever show my feelings, about the abuse, because my abuser was still living and still in my life. So this is a real problem for people. And, I know for myself, I wasn't sure how I was going to handle it if those drawers ever burst open, because I had so much rage and so much anger and so much despair and from the abuse that I was thinking, I don't even think I can handle this. If this stuff comes bursting over the drawers, I just don't even know if I can handle it. What I was concerned about was that it was self-injury and suicide, because my family was suicidal. Lots of members of my family were suicidal. 2 of them actually committed suicide, and I was concerned that that would put me over the edge, because I had suicidal ideation most of my life. So I didn't want to deal with it. So I just stuffed it again, and got really busy in my life so I wouldn't have to deal with it, and looked after other people so I wouldn't have to look after myself, And then at the age of 42, those drawers actually bust open. They just burst open, and that's the lowest point I've ever been in my lifetime. Was just no way of possibly dealing with these overwhelming feelings and emotions from so long ago that had just destroyed me. So what's really sad is that I didn't reach out and get help until after the age of 42. I wish that I would have got help a long time ago. And, would my life have been much different? Well, I think I just would have been able to be better to myself, kind to myself, and learn how to deal with things better, right? And not suffer on my own. That's why I always tell people, don't suffer on your own, because I did that. We all, pretty well, I think all survivors do for a long time until they finally get some help, right? So they go on to say, today, as you're reading this, you're probably saying that you do not repress your feelings. As a child, you became an expert at hiding your feelings in order to protect yourself from the torrent of abuse. This may be, not applicable to some people, but it is applicable to probably lots. But not everybody would be in this situation. But they said, as a child, you became an expert at hiding your feelings in order to protect yourself from the torrent of abuse. It was easier to deny your feelings than to face being rejected or criticized for them. And this reaction was an automatic response, which probably goes on now, even though you're an adult. If you don't deal with your repressed or avoided feelings, both those left over from your childhood and those that occur today, you will be more likely to experience the long-term effects of childhood abuse. And I don't know how true that is. I think the effects of long-term, effects of abuse are just what they are, whether we express our feelings or not. I just think that it's important to get help, and I wish that I would have, like I said. But whatever it is, even if it's anonymous support, that's what I did. I went anonymous support because I don't trust people. I don't trust anybody. So I don't not enough to try to get into my head. No, thank you. And so it's like I went to anonymous support, which was very helpful. And so that's what I'm saying. I was really glad that I started reaching out and getting some help. And whatever works for you. Some people prefer to have a counselor. Some people prefer to have a therapist. But whatever it is, we should get the help that we need, because we so did not deserve to be abused. That's ridiculous. And to be treated so horrifically. And then, expected that we're just going to be okay. That's just all right. It's like, no, it's not all right. And that's not okay, what happened to us. And we deserve so much better. And so now, as adults, walking through this journey here, we have to make sure we get our needs met, because our needs were not met as children if we've been abused. And so, some way and somehow, our needs have been not met or rejected or whatever. So we need to make sure we do that for ourselves as adults. And so that's what I'm working on, is trying to be responsible for myself and do the right things by myself, because the right things were not done by me by my parents and a sibling of mine who chose to abuse me, from birth up, So really horrific. And I deserve so much better, so do you, right? And so it's tough. I know a lot of people don't feel that they repress feelings. I don't know if I do or not. I probably do, just because I'm extremely busy and I can only deal with so many things at one time. So I have to repress them for a little while. But what I'm working on is, that's why I do this inner child healing work and work through John Bradshaw's books and work through, Bernie stuff and now Allender, this Allender series about the CSA child sexual abuse. So I just do it in chunks and pieces when I have time, which is good because it does allow me to then get in touch with those feelings that I have to sort of, put away for a while I don't have time to work on them. So it's kind of interesting. So there, I guess we'll pick up. No, we'll read the rest of this, and then we'll pick up the rest of this article on Monday. They said coming to terms with your feelings isn't going to be easy. A good way to begin is by starting a journal, they said. A journal will help you express your thoughts so that you can develop your feelings. And if you feel this is unnatural, you can talk to a loved one or a therapist. We strongly recommend you seek professional help, and you can use our section on choosing a therapist. That's Havoca, HAVOCA.org. Therapist to help you decide. Becoming aware of your feelings is the first step. Next, you need to understand them. So if you are finding this difficult and you can't face or afford therapy, then feel free to contact Havoca, a totally free and confidential service. And once you understand your feelings, you will be able to see how they have affected your life since the abuse. And through education, you will be able to educate yourself to readjust your behaviors to accommodate these new emotions. And finally, through changing these patterns, you and others around you will notice a transformation. So that's the end of this part of it. But there's more. There's a little bit more we'll look at Monday. But that's interesting. And, I did, like they're saying, starting a journal. That's basically how this whole thing started. I started a blog. Instead of starting a journal, like a private journal, I started a blog online because I wanted everybody to see what had happened. And I called it Not So Fond Memories, Growing Up Abused or something like that. This is a long time ago, back in 2009. And, Not So Fond Memories, Growing Up in an Abusive Household. I was writing that blog and putting it out there everywhere I could because my abuser dad was staying with me for a year. And he was an old man, but he was holding a knife out at me in the kitchen, and I was afraid he was going to kill me because he had threatened to kill us all when I was growing up. And this, my adult me was saying, "Oh, he's 80-something years old. He's just mentally ill. He's psychologically ill. He's the same abuser dad that he always was, but he can't beat me up anymore." And he's not going to hurt me. The little person inside of me, this wounded inner child that I still am, all these parts of me that were wounded. Was freaking out because all of a sudden my mentally ill, crazy, psychologically ill, abusive 80-something-year-old dad is staying with me holding a knife out at me and walking around kind of looking crazy like he wanted to kill me several times throughout the year. And I started to freak out. So I wrote a blog, a public-facing blog, and just started detailing the abuse because I wanted the world to know, because I thought if he kills me in the middle of the night, I want somebody to know what happened there. That's exactly what happened. That's why I started I went public with my information because of that. It was just a safety mechanism. He did move out shortly, let's say 4 or 5 months after I started writing that blog, but he was just staying with me temporarily for a year. And that's what threw me into chaos. I was already on my healing journey at the age of 42, and then this happened when I was about 44, 45. A few years later, 2009, 2010, that year. So I started writing that blog, and then that blog became A Life of Death, The Redemption. And I sort of just transferred over the blog to that book, so that's what that book is. And I showed him the book, and I'm like, you can read it. It's out there. I had it published, and I'm like, you can read it. It's all true. And he wouldn't read it. And he wrote a letter, but it wasn't an apology. It was just, well, that was the times, and that's just the way it was. And he never apologized for any of it, But he was angry because I wrote that book, and then I thought he might really try to kill me now. So I had a lot of fear from these old childhood, abuse sessions that I would have to deal with from my dad and from my mom. But all this stuff, this fear came back as if I was my little self again, right? I feared for my life. I feared that he would attack me and kill me. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible situation. So that's why I wrote my blog. I instead of a journal, I put it out there for the world to see, because I was like, just in case everybody will know, because it's not like my parents were, that nobody knew about the abuse. Both of my parents were brought up on child abuse charges when I was very little, and because my dad had beaten up my brother, and it's not like it was a secret or anything that my parents were abusers. It's just the issue that later on in life they had so many friends and so many people just loved them because they didn't know what they had done to each other or to their children, and so they just loved my mom. They loved my dad. They had so much support, and I thought, these buggers are not getting away with this. The social worker signed off the case, but left us in the home, and then the abuse just started all over again. And these buggers got away with it, And so that was my piece, I was like, no, I'm writing a public journal. So not a private journal, I'm writing a public journal. And I'm glad that I did, because 2 of my brothers are dead. One suicide by hanging, who was a brother that actually sexually abused me, but he's the one that my dad abused severely as a child. And mostly my dad abused him. And my brother Howard, who died of a drug overdose, which really was a suicide. And because he had been overdosing his whole life and really didn't care if he lived or died, and I just call it suicide because it was. Just took him a little longer to get it done, but he did. He finally made it. And my parents are I hold my parents responsible for that, because I have all the memories intact of the abuse that my dad and my mom dished out to them, and and to me as well. And so I do hold them absolutely responsible, And so that's really kind of why I went public with my story. It wasn't just about me, I just wanted people to know this is wrong. It's so wrong that it's not even funny. So we'll move on. We'll pick up the rest of that article on Monday. The next part, positive reinforcement. What are we doing right in our daily walk? Looking at the positives instead of always looking at the negative. It's easy to get down on ourselves, especially if we're abuse survivors, right? This inner critical parent voice, telling us whatever negative thoughts it wants to make us feel bad about ourselves. You're this, you're that. You're not doing this, you're not doing that. Just coming down hard on ourselves all the time. And I thought, what are we doing? What can we look at positively, in our daily walk that we're doing right? And I suppose just keep going forward, keep getting up in the morning and doing the things that we need to do, getting things done, whatever that to-do list is, working on it. Don't be hard on ourselves if we can't accomplish it all. I make these huge to-do lists and I only get through a few things, and I'm like, and I now I've learned to cut myself some slack, and look at what I have done instead of what I didn't get done. And say, well, that's good. I got this done, and I got this done. That other stuff can wait. As I'm starting to get much better about being kind to myself. And then when somebody around me wants to be critical and sort of hurtful and rude, I actually just don't pay much attention to them, and I just explain the fact that I'm getting done what I can do. This is the best that I can do today. I'm not really concerned about tomorrow. I'm doing what I can do today to make sure that I get through what I need to get done, and have a good day, and be kind to myself, and not put so much pressure on myself, because it's difficult, to get to walk this walk, as well as trying to juggle all the things that we need to juggle in this world. And so, I'm just being more kind to myself, I'd say, and I think that's the positive. That's looking at it in a more positive light, instead of becoming down on myself for not getting things done, right? And here's a really cool positive affirmation that we can say. I open my heart to my inner child. So I could walk around saying that all day. I open my heart to my inner child. And I already did. I opened my heart to my inner children, the many, many, many of them that there are, from the points of wounding where I was wounded. It's it's kind of almost like a form of PTSD, or it's trauma, So I open my heart to my inner child. Absolutely, I do. And I'm getting in touch with myself and my inner child, and learning and actually showing love to my inner child and my inner children, to say, what, you were just, I see them, and they were so wounded, they're getting much better now. But that's because, I say the things to them that they needed to hear, and I allow them to know that they didn't deserve that, and that they're lovely and they're beautiful and they're precious. They never deserved that. And so yeah, that's good. I really like that one. So we have about a minute left, and I just hope you have a wonderful weekend. Take good care of yourself. if you're struggling and you're having a hard time, you just can't cope, and things are not going well, you make sure you reach out and get a hold of somebody. If you don't have anybody around you that you can trust, or that you have, a friend that even cares enough to be a friend, call a crisis line. Do something, but you stick it out, because this, you deserve so much better. This is our fight. We do not deserve to be destroyed by our past and by our abuse. See, that's ridiculous. And that's where I was so many years ago, just allowing myself to be destroyed by the past abuse that really destroyed me in the first place. And then as an adult, just allowing it to take me down. And, I thought, no way. I deserve so much better. I did not deserve to be abused. Nobody does. And so I'm going to get help. So that's what I want you to do. If you're struggling this weekend and you can't cope, you make sure you reach out and get some help. Take care, everybody. Have a nice weekend. Be good and kind to yourself and those around you. And I wish you a wonderful weekend. And we'll talk to you on Monday. Bye-bye.
A few things to know before you fly WestJet to Nashville. You don't need cowboy boots to have a great time in Nashville. You don't need a cowboy hat either. You don't even need to be a country music fan. To have a great time in Nashville, you just need to go to Nashville. WestJet can certainly help with that, with great low WestJet fares nonstop from Calgary to Nashville. Visit WestJet.com or call your travel agent.